Ready, set, secure.
And welcome to episode 53 of Ready, Set, Secure at Set Solutions podcast. My name is Michael Farnham, CTO here at Set Solutions. And as always, joining us, Greg Porterfield. How you doing, Greg?
I'm doing well. I've been writing code all week.
What have you been writing?
New tools.
Oh, yeah? Nothing you want to share right now? Maybe
Not
a future podcast?
Yeah, there'll probably be future podcasts.
Okay, cool. That sounds like fun. All right. Well, thank you as always, and thank you for covering last time.
Absolutely.
Since I wasn't available. You did a wonderful job. You and Kenny had a really good discussion around ChatGPT. And
we did. It was very interesting.
Very good. So if you haven't seen that one, check that one out. That's a good episode. And joining us, very happy to have Annie Jamshed. How are you doing, Annie?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm
Absolutely.
doing great.
So Annie, you're security architect at JP Morgan Chase,
Yes.
but we're not here to talk about your day job. We're going to talk about what you do in the industry. You do a lot of good work in the industry. You run the Women in Cybersecurity group here locally.
That's right.
We'll get into it, but I hear you'll have a conference coming up soon.
Yes.
And Annie works with me at HUSECCon some as well. She does a lot of big, well, actually, she took a really big role this last couple of times, helping with speaker organization and stuff. So she does a ton outside of her day job for the cybersecurity community. She's an asset to have here in Houston. So I'm really happy you're here.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Absolutely. So now we'll jump into news like we always do every week. We get a couple of articles that we need to cover. So article that Annie wanted to talk about was around the unfortunate tragedies happen out in Turkey and Syria with the earthquakes. And a lot of people lost their lives there. And unfortunately, people are taking advantage of that. Some scams on Twitter and PayPal and that kind of thing. So we'll talk about that. And then Greg wants to talk about SonicWALL, had some web content filtering issues with an update that happened with them on Windows 11, I think, specifically. So he's going to get into that. So those are two articles. Annie, why don't you talk about what kind of, I mean, obviously we know why we're talking about that article, but
Right.
what brought you to it and what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like you mentioned, right? In the news, we've seen the Turkey and Syria earthquake and the tragedies. You know, the number of tragedies over time we've seen increase. The last time I saw the news, it was like above 15,000. And this article, it was interesting because I saw, and I'll talk about why it was interesting because I actually experienced this some time ago. There was a flood that happened in Pakistan. And I experienced this where someone came to me. I was visiting one of the local restaurants and someone came to me and they said, started asking me questions around, well, you know, we're doing, collecting some funds for this flood and would you like to, donate? And I asked which organization they were associated with and took the name. I won't take the name here. And I knew that organization and the local people that were associated with them.
Yeah.
And I wanted to verify before, I gave them any money, but they asked, would you give? And I was like, well, I have my own trusted resources to which I have donated. And, thank you for asking. And I'm really happy that you're doing this. And it turned out that they were scammers, right? They were really just collecting money. They were not associated with our organization. And when I saw this, in this article, they talk about there were PayPal accounts that were being used to collect funds for this cause to help people in Turkey and Syria. But they're not, actually using the funds toward them. And I know that, in the cybersecurity world, we are all security professionals and, we do the research and we have our sources and stuff. But I think it's important to educate our family members as well, because, I mean, these people, for them, there is no moral compass here, right? They're going to try to use any and every opportunity they can. And it was just, for me, I saw that and I could just relate to it immediately because I had experienced it. And I also wanted to bring up that because, of course, I mean, it's a tragedy and the people there, they do need any support that they can get. There are companies that are matching any donation that you give. So do check with your companies if you want to donate. There are some companies that are doing a matching program, but again, like do the research and always at any time, if you are a giving person, have those trusted resources to which you should be donating.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where there's 4 or 5 organizations that I typically will give through for anything like that.
Yeah.
And there's some of them that you can go right to their website and you can anybody coming door to door, or anybody just that you just all of a sudden find online or whatever. It's like, yeah, let's make sure. But it's a good point too. If you can give to your company and your company will give that and match it, then you know that it's generally going somewhere that's trusted. So that's a good call. Greg, you got any?
I had two thoughts on this one.
Greg's got a lot of notes over there. So
the first one is red teamers, phishers, social engineering organizations that are setting up phishing exercises. Do not use this.
Yeah,
this is
absolutely
not a tactic. Don't try it. It's bad taste. It's bad form, and it just makes everybody look terrible. So don't. The second part was it is becoming increasingly difficult to figure out which organizations are legit or which ones have the right reputation. There are plenty of legit orgs that may or may not be tasteful for certain situations. And having tried to do this a number of times for different situations, there was a situation back home where there was a big fire rolled through a city. Was trying to figure out how we could help and trying to figure out how to legitimately donate, not help someone pad their tax buffers or avoid the scams entirely. We take all of the worst parts of phishing and social engineering and combine it with the sense of urgency of people are dying. And it's hard to kind of stop and think for this, but that is the best advice. It was in there of like, put your heart in a little box for a second and think about where you're going to do it. Anybody who's reaching out for donations, be very skeptical. Look for the ones who are accepting them. The Red Cross, the Red Crescent, the UN is starting to figure some things out. So we will have legitimate channels to get funds out there. And this problem isn't going to go away anytime soon. Donating money now or money in a couple of days when we have legitimate sources isn't going to make that big of a difference.
Well, to that point, I mean, most of those organizations aren't taking the funds that you're giving now for a tragedy and using them directly in that tragedy. They're using funds that they collect all year round that people give in regular giving and use those. And then those funds will come in and alleviate. But you can wait because those organizations raise money all year long. So if you're a giving person, the other thing you ought to consider is giving to those organizations all the time on a regular basis, being charitable in general. And then when the tragedy does come, you know that they're in a place where they can do that. And then you can give over and above to help get those coffers filled back up and give some relief. So one way of, maybe just practically trying to get out of that situation. But okay. Anything else on that, Annie?
No, I think that, Greg, he made some very valid points and, just make sure that you're doing your research and using the trusted resources. And I've seen that, you're talking about the people that, donate all year long. I think the people that are already doing that are mostly not going to be the ones who are going to fall victim to this.
Exactly,
It's mostly like those one-time donors who are going to be probably scrolling through the social media and see something pop up.
Exactly,
and then they will be immediately tempted to donate. So it really is like those people who want to donate for one time, one specific cause, to be careful about this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Greg, on to a not as tragic of a situation, obviously, but still a cybersecurity problem that people need to think about. So what's going on with SonicWALL?
So this comes out of Bleeping Computer. They posted it back on February 8th, so about a week ago. And the general idea of the article is there was an update to the crypto API somewhere around the Windows 11 2022 H2 version change. So kind of a big patch update. And the crypto API changed. And what that did was it broke SonicWALL's ability to kind of get in the middle of like user activity when they're trying to look at websites and filter out things by categories. So on a SonicWALL or many other types of firewalls, the administrators and the organizations can set rules for this kind of content is not allowed. They can go to these sites, but they can't go to these. Gambling, social media, what have you. So the part that broke was that category detection. So this is a gambling site or this is social media. Those category filters started breaking. The individual blocks, so a particular URL or a domain, those were still working fine. So this was just a curious thing because so far that I've seen, it only affected SonicWALL. SonicWALL has released a patch. It's a client install. It is something that has to be done by the administrator directly. It won't happen automatically. So if you have a SonicWALL, go patch your stuff. And it's pushing out towards the endpoints so that they can re-enable that communication. The interesting thing about it, or at least the part that caught my attention, was the crypto API has been through some changes recently. It had a vulnerability that was patched last fall that could lead to collisions. It was a hash collision problem that affected how like certificates are validated. We know this certificate is good because it came from this organization, or this file is good because it's signed by this organization. That's what the crypto API helps with. And there was a vulnerability that was able to kind of spoof some of that stuff. So Windows made some adjustments, or Microsoft made some adjustments and fixed that vulnerability, released that patch. And now SonicWALL's having problems getting some of their stuff decrypted. So it was just kind of an interesting scenario. And also, if you have a SonicWALL, go patch.
Patch, always patch. I think the latest updates that Windows put in also affected VMware. Some of the VM machines that they couldn't, I can't remember. I just heard the news this morning on another podcast that I listened to. So I think some of those updates have caused a little bit of chaos out there. But yeah, being able to spoof certificates in any way, shape, or form and get something it's a nice way to fool somebody into thinking where you're going is legit. So that's absolutely not a good thing. So hopefully they get that fixed. So how would that affect you from a day to day and what you do? Would you have any effect on you? I mean, I know you don't want to talk about what you do,
thankfully I'm a security architect now, but I was just thinking about this, coming from with a background in a SOC. So anytime something like this would happen, if we were using SonicWALL, then we would be right? Probably working on some detections, putting them in place,
scurrying all over the place.
Until the patch would come in. So
that and if you've got an organization that's decent size and you've got a ton of SonicWALLs out there with branch offices, I mean, those are generally those ones that you see like in a branch office place. And now you got to have 50 branches, and now you're going to have to update them all. I mean, that's can cause you a little bit of headache.
Well, because this one goes out to the endpoints, it's a slightly larger, like the device will help push it, but it's the endpoint update because it's not the SonicWALL that's getting changed. It's their client side sitting on the agent sitting on the client.
Yeah, so that even bigger of a headache.
Yeah, this one's not fun.
All right. Well, thank you both for the news articles, and now we will jump over to the main segment. So, you are the main segment. How do you like that?
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Andy's like, why am I here? No, we really wanted to bring you on. Like I said in the intro, you do a ton for the cybersecurity community in Houston. I've known you for probably 4 or 5 years now and seen all of the volunteer work and everything that you do. You have the women's cybersecurity booth every year at HUSECCon. You help with HUSECCon. You run those things. But I want to talk about, those are cool things you do for the cybersecurity community. I want to talk about you first and let you kind of give your story and what got you into cyber after, you grew up and figured out what you wanted to do with your life and all that good stuff. So
absolutely. Well, I want to start off by saying thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Right. And I know that we've been planning on this for a while. So I'm definitely excited to be here. So in terms of my background, so I'm from Pakistan. That's where I got my undergraduate degree from. So I have a bachelor in electrical engineering. And the reason for getting a degree in engineering was when I was young. So, I mean, we traveled back and forth a lot. We came to U.S. for some time, went back. And then the first time I visited was actually in 92. I was 3 years old. Yeah.
That makes me feel old. I was 20.
Yeah. And then we came back here in 2000 and lived here for some time. And it was in Houston. Anytime we came, it was in Houston. And I visited NASA. So I was really inspired by NASA. So as a child, I wanted to be an astronaut.
Very cool.
And I remember, looking up the background of the different astronauts, and they were all engineers. So the reason why I chose engineering, so we lived here for like a period of 5 years abroad, and then we went back. So when we moved back, I was 16. And in my heart, I was like, I'm here. That's fine. I'll get my education, eventually move abroad and, become an astronaut. So the reason why I chose electrical engineering was because of that. And thankfully, it was actually one of the degrees that were recognized by the institutions here in US or Canada. So it was an accredited, degree, which is also a problem because many people that have, international degrees, when they come here, a lot of time their degrees aren't recognized and they have to start from the scratch. So yeah, I mean, I got my degree, but I was in Pakistan when we moved back for a period of 8 years. And so after I got my degree, there was honestly like not a lot of opportunities in the city that I lived in. And I couldn't move out of the city because I had a boy. He was really young at that time. So I taught in a school for some time, not some time, I mean 3 years. I taught in a school. And then I just waited. I was a little bit bummed after I graduated. I couldn't really find a job. I was like, I got a degree. I worked so hard, like I really want to do something. And my parents were like, well, just take this time and get a maybe master degree, right? Like just further your education. I was like, no, if I ever move abroad, like that was, the thought I had. If I ever move abroad, which I hope that I would, I will just get a degree from a foreign country. And so because I think maybe I didn't really get the chance to work in the field and get experience, I started looking into other fields, and just out of curiosity, I always say this, I don't have a fancy story of where I was hacked or I saw someone get hacked. No, it was just curiosity about, like computer and systems and data and how it's secured. And I mean, I had internet at home, thankfully, not everybody has internet and computers. We did. I was fortunate. And I would Google a lot, anything from young age, I had curiosity about, I would just Google and look up. And I started looking into, information security. I just Googled information security, like how is data secured? And I remember that even at that time, I was thinking, well, if I'm going to get a master degree, maybe this is something that I want to get a master degree in. At that time, I didn't know that it was a growing field or anything like that, right? And I saw courses that were being offered in Pakistan at that time. And that was just as a backup if I wasn't able to go abroad. And then in 2015, I moved here to United States. And I was actually visiting my parents. And I came to Houston. They were living in Houston. They had already moved here. And I was still living back home. So I came here visiting them, and I visited University of Houston, and I searched. I was like, I always wanted to get a master's degree. Let me see if they have a cybersecurity program. And luckily they did.
They do.
Still
do.
Yeah, they
program.
do. It's a really good program. So I applied. Fortunately, I got in. And so I transferred, not transferred. What do they call it? Yeah, I think transferred the visa to the status to a student status because I was a visitor here. Again, they allow that here in Texas. There are some states in which it's not allowed. So yeah, I was lucky. I got my status, started studying, and then I learned. Funny, I should have known that before. I jumped into cybersecurity, but then I learned, it's a growing field. And yeah, people make a lot of money too. So I was like, that's just awesome, right? Like for me, it was just curiosity, and it led to all that. So I was like, that's just fantastic. So I got my degree, and in 2018, that's the year I graduated. I learned about a conference that was happening, and it was called Women in Cybersecurity. And my friend was actually the one who was interested in attending that conference. And because she was going, I was like, well, I don't have, and the reason I say is because I want to recognize, my professor. I was like, no, I don't have the funds. Obviously, I was studying, and I wasn't working at that time. I was like, I don't have the money, but hey, let me go ask my professor if he can, help support, the travel and expenses. And I remember going into his office, and I was like, Dr. Conklin.
Dr. Conklin. Good
I'll
old Art Conklin.
Yeah.
Oh, he doesn't mind.
I was like, Dr. Conklin, I want to go to the conference. And he's like, which conference? I was like, Women in Cybersecurity. He's like, send me an email. So I sent him an email, and I was like, but I don't have the money. He's like, just send me an email. And he sponsored my travel, and through that I was able to.
Dude.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
He's awesome, really. And so I attended the conference through the funds that I received from the college, and it was awesome. It was, I mean, I've been associated, and we're going to talk about women in cybersecurity eventually, right? So I've been associated with this since 2018, and when I attended the conference, it's a huge conference. It happens every year, and every year it's growing. So at that time when I attended, I think there were more than 1,000 attendees in 2018. I could be wrong, maybe a little less, but it was amazing. Majority women. And I mean, if we talk about engineering or cybersecurity, we all know that it's a male-dominant field, right? And even when I was studying, in the program, actually, there were women that I would see, right? But for me, it was just fascinating seeing women, with so much experience in cybersecurity, where I was just getting exposed to it, right? And I was so inspired, and I was like, oh my God, like, I just want to, stay close to this somehow, like this community. And then there was a career fair. We visited the different booths that were there, and there was one that they had where they were talking about starting student chapters. And at that time, they did not have any student chapters. And so I took that information. I came back and I talked to Dr. Conklin. I was like, I think we should have a student chapter here at University of Houston. And he was like, well, you have my blessing, go for it. Whatever you need, just let me know. And I had 2 friends, so you can't just start a chapter on your own. You need at least like 3 people in the university. That was a criteria. So we actually were ahead of the game, because they were going to start passing out this information in August. I was graduating, and I just wasn't sure if anyone else after me would be passionate enough, which I know someone would have eventually, started this, but I just really wanted to, start it before I graduated. So I got together with 2 of my friends, and we formed this, and then I graduated. So then I went back actually, and I, interviewed students. Like, it wasn't even interviewing. Like, there were the ones that we didn't know, the ones that were in the program. I just called them up. Nicole, right? Nicole and Johnny was another class fellow. So I just picked up the phone. I was like, I'm starting this, and I need you. Like, that's it,
I know Nicole will help.
And I was like, it's new for me too, right? And I've never started or founded anything before, but we'll figure it out, right? We're going to work together, and we'll figure it out. So yeah, I mean, all of them were on board. It was awesome, and I mean, that was a student chapter story. So I stayed close to the, worked with the students a lot for 2 years, and then COVID hit. Right. And everything was.
We remember.
Yeah. Everything just, shut down, and we were all in our home. And I really wanted to start the professional affiliate, but I was involved in too many things at that time. It was a student chapter. I also became the outreach director for CSA, which is Control System Cybersecurity Association International. So I didn't have the time really at that time to start the professional affiliate, but when COVID started, a lot of the things that I was working on, I wasn't working on them anymore. So I was like, well, this is time, if we can form the affiliate, then that's going to be great. And so then again, some of the students that had already graduated, I contacted them. A colleague of mine, I was working closely with her, so I told her about it. I was like, if you're interested in being part of the leadership team, and she was excited for it as well. And that's when we started the affiliate. And it's been 2 years now. It's 2023, right? Yeah, October 2020. We started the affiliate. It's been 2 years now, and it's been amazing. I mean, all the leadership team, they're also part of it. We're actually having an event next week, 25th of February. And
I saw the announcement on that, because y'all are kind of getting prepared for the conference.
Yes,
right?
That's right. So the whole idea for this event is really to get together before we all go to the conference. And I mean, to talk about the organization itself, it's huge, right? Like I said, they have a conference every year. Their goal is to help with the recruitment, retention, and the advancement of women. And so they have local affiliates. I mean, ours is one in Houston. They have affiliates at the local level, at the regional level, and even at the country level, and all over the world. There was recently, I saw in the news there is a WSIS Pakistan now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was so
There you go.
excited to see that. And then there's WSIS Australia, and then they have student chapters as well. So it's really, helping support the women at the local level, and providing them with the resources, and they have a lot of programs as well. So they partner with different companies, Google, Target, and they build programs. And yeah, I mean, I love it. I mean, even now, even after, like years of experience, there are some areas in cybersecurity, and we know cybersecurity is really broad,
Yeah.
domain, right? Yeah.
absolutely.
There are many, subdomains of cybersecurity. There's threat intelligence, malware, reverse malware engineering, and a lot of that. I mean, obviously, we don't know everything, right? So, with Target, I remember last year I participated in the program where they worked with Target to set up challenges for actually doing analysis of malware and then writing a report and stuff like that.
Nice.
So it's pretty cool, and they offer scholarships as well through partnership with other companies.
That's very cool. What do you think?
I think I was supposed to ask about the the Houston affiliate, but we actually already covered what that is. It's interesting to see these orgs coming up and seeing women in cybersecurity and some of the other branches of bringing more diversity to this field.
Yeah.
The more, the better, as fast as possible. How many people can we get in, and how do we kind of break some of those molds of what has been, historically male dominated, white male dominated, these kind of things? How do we change that and get more perspectives? Because we absolutely need them.
Yeah. And we talked about this in October when we had Leslie on and Hacks for Pancakes, and we talked about getting more people in it. It borders on getting political, and we don't want to do that. But this is not a politically correct thing in my brain. This is a diversity of thought thing in my brain, because cybersecurity needs diversity of thought. If you have a certain group that are just thinking of things in a certain way, and you do, I mean, unfortunately, if you were raised a certain way, raised in a certain country, raised in a certain region, your thoughts work in a certain way. It is what it is. Having people from other backgrounds, other ways they've come up, and your story is fairly unique in a lot of ways. It brings a different way of thinking things. And, when you get into the idea of cybersecurity as a global issue, and you have bad actors coming from all over the globe, if there's a group of bad actors coming from Pakistan, they just happen to be in Pakistan, culturally, I need your thought process involved in that, right? Because you're going to know them a lot better than I would.
Yeah.
I tend to think of them in a certain way. You're going to be like, what about this? What about, and you could break something open that way.
Yeah.
So to me, it's very much a diversity of thought. We're trying to secure organizations and people all over the world. We need the diversity of thought.
Yeah.
That's just it's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we have shortage of cybersecurity talent overall, right? I mean, it's no secret, right? I mean, we see these statistics all the time, and I think we need to tap into, encouraging more women, because, I mean, if you look at the population, right? I mean, it's
50-50 roughly. Why are we not getting 50% of the population into this field?
And I'll tell you that there's a lot of, I say, like, misperceptions around cybersecurity as well. Like, when you talk to people, they think that some people think that it's just like it's hackers, right? Like, you're wearing hoodies, you're sitting behind, like in a dark room, and you're hacking. You're not, right?
I do that all the time.
And then there are some people that think that maybe you need to know coding, right? Right? I mean, for some things that you do, but not for everything, right?
If you're getting into governance, risk, and compliance, and you want to write policies to help organizations, you don't know how to. You don't need to know how to.
So there are areas in cybersecurity that are technical in nature, and then there are governance, risk, and compliance that aren't. So I think that, there's really like room for anybody and everybody who's interested in this area. And I, live and breathe cybersecurity. And I've, even in my household, I think like I've, convinced all the youngsters in our family to get into cybersecurity. Even my sister, she has education and background in education. And she's also interested in cybersecurity. So, like, yeah,
Very
I mean,
cool.
in the event that we will be happening, she's going to be coming with me. And
Can you
she
come talk
wants
to my kids? Because none of them are getting into cybersecurity. It's driving me
Really?
absolutely batty. My oldest one almost did. If he listens to this, he'll be mad at me probably.
Oh,
But
okay.
he was almost there. It's like,
Yeah.
well, Annie, we could go on and on and on. I always joke every time. Lauren has to edit these, so we have to stop at some point, unfortunately. Thank you so much for being on here and for doing what you do in the community and bringing women in the community, encouraging that. We should probably link to Art in the to Dr. Conklin in the show notes and let him see this, because he really is. He does a lot for this community here
Absolutely,
in Houston.
yeah.
Guy's great. So let's give him a little play. But thank you for being on here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Telling your story. It's strong. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Greg, any parting thoughts?
Not this time.
Not this? Well, that's a rarity. Wow. Well, as usual, thank you for being on here. Everybody, thank you for listening and watching. If you're watching the video, episode 53, we will see you next time for something else really cool. All right. Thanks, everybody.